Hey, so I started to film a look around the Asus Republic of Gamers Strix X99 game motherboard when I first received it around 7 months ago now. And now that I'm back from being MIA, whilst I'm still getting back on my feet, I decided that I'd love to get the rest of the footage I needed to be able to finish and upload my video on it. Although that does mean that some of what I say in the video is a little outdated, especially as it was originally filmed as like a quick look at what was new with Broadwell-E compared to Asus's previous Haswell-E motherboards, which doesn't really make the greatest amount of sense this far after launch, so sorry about that. But here's my video on this board. Hey, I'm Lauren, and with the launch of Intel's new Broadwell-E processors prompting motherboard manufacturers to refresh their X99 board lineups, I have just received an Asus Republic of Gamers Strix X99 gaming motherboard to take a look at in a video, which, by the way, has a ridiculously long name. So I'm not really sure on their decision to move the Strix brand across to ROG. When they first announced Strix, I did question my rep on how the products would sit in the lineup, with them already having ROG as their gaming and overclocking brand. And whilst I can't remember exactly what my rep said, as it's been quite a while ago now, I basically interpreted that Strix was their casual gamer brand, while ROG was their more enthusiast gaming brand. So because of that, I can't help but feel that some of the people who have consistently gone for ROG products over the years may be put off by having the more budget-friendly branding encroach on some of the products. But anyways, I should probably mention this video isn't a full review of this board, it's just a quick look in which I'm simply going to covering a few of the features and the like, starting with my thoughts on these, which are replacement decals for the orange logos that you can see on the chipset heatsink above the RIO. Basically, the Strix X99 game motherboard comes with RGB lighting, which is positioned in the rear I/O shroud, the centre bridge, and the PCIe slot clips, which I'll be able to show you and talk about more as soon as I've got this board in a rig. Now, ROG have gone about implementing RGB on their boards in two different ways in the past, either by tacking it onto a board that already has a determined accenting colour, like with the 8 Hero, or by having a board that has a very kind of stealthy, kind of black and grey colour theme, with the addition of RGB LEDs instead of physical coloured accents, like what we saw with the Maximus 8 formula. With the Strix X99 game board, however, Asus have gone somewhere in the middle of these two designs, giving you physical coloured accents like what we have with the 8 Hero, but allowing you to swap them out for different colours to offer the user more customisation. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, as even though I'm now on board with this design decision, and I'll tell you why in a second, when I first saw the decals and the pictures online, I was like, what have they done? And the reason why is because I actually made a video on the Maximus 8 Hero a few months back where I showed using vinyl to easily customise the accenting colour of the board to match whatever colour you wanted, and talked about how I felt like they'd missed a trick by not either selling separately or including in the box different coloured accenting stickers to allow the user to fully customise the board. And so even though this is essentially what I asked Asus to do in that video, the whole point in that video was to show a workaround for them doing an RGB motherboard wrong. So for them to include that workaround in the box is just, I don't know, it doesn't sit quite right. That being said, the reason why I'm now super on board with it is that sometimes it's just better to have something physically be a colour rather than just to be lit that colour, because it won't cast a coloured hue on the parts around it, affecting how they look, and it also allows you to keep a colour theme even when the rig's off. And for the first time, Asus have actually given me a way to have a physically pink ROG motherboard without modding or buying anything extra, which is, epic. I say pink because with the board you get pink, silver and green options to change to. The silver being a great choice to go for if you want to rely more on the RGB LEDs for your colour theme, or if the colour you want just isn't included, say, blue for example. And these are just applied with Freeham adhesive. Ultimately it's up to you though to decide, if this is something you like, because I do think it's a very subjective thing. On a really quick note though, before I move on to the point, and this is something that I think is just so epically exciting if this is the case, which I'm sure actually isn't, and you'll be like, that won't be the case, Lauren, but it would be absolutely epic if it is. Basically, a few months back, my Asus rep told me that my video had been used internally, so I should say my 8 Hero video had been used internally to showcase how the board could be customised or something like that. And then he recently said that whilst they'd never admit it, my video may have played a part in influencing this design decision, which, whilst I highly doubt that me could have played some part in the thought process of Asus's product development, it's just incredibly epic to think there might even be a small chance.
But yeah, sorry, I'm on with the video. So being an X99 motherboard, it features a 2011 3-3 socket, which supports both Haswell-E and Broadwell-E processors, including the new 10-core 20-thread i7-6950X, which I would absolutely love to be able to get my hands on one. Now, I was only able to borrow an entry-level 6800K, which, whilst it's not as exciting, is probably the better Broadwell-E CPU for me to have when it comes to making videos, as I imagine it's the one that my audience will more like to get, given that it is a lot more affordable. Also, it's still a very decent CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads, so I'm not complaining. So in terms of the power delivery, the board uses an 8-phase design for the CPU and a 2+2 phase design for the memory. It's using Asus's DigiPlus VRAM design that we're used to seeing. The board has 8 quad-channel DDR4 memory slots that can support up to 128GB of memory. We also have 3 PCIe 3.0 slots, supporting up to 3-way SLI and Crossfire, which of course will run at different speeds depending on depending on how many lanes your CPU has. So if you've got a 40-lane CPU, you'll get X16 for a single GPU, 16X, 16X for 2 cards, or 8X, 16X, 8X for 3 cards. And with a 28-lane CPU, it's exactly the same, except this slot here runs at 8X, or so X8, rather than X16 for dual and triple GPU setups. Then there's 3 PCIe 2.0 slots. This full-size one is wired X4 and shares its bandwidth with the Wi-Fi Go module that this board has. And then these two are wired X1 and share theirs with the 2 USB 3.1 ports on the ROG. Now, you might have noticed that this top PCIe slot has been reinforced with metal to make it stronger and less likely to flex or break, and this isn't a new thing. It was first seen on the MSI Z170 boards, although I think Gigabyte also did the same sort of thing around the same time. Although the concept has been implemented differently across the different manufacturers' boards. But despite this not being something new, it's still something that I want to talk about, as I really hate the idea that they've only done this to one of the slots. Because to me, instead of seeing it and being like, this top slot is really strong and reinforced, it instead causes me to be like, these 3 slots are really weak compared to this safe slot. That's what Asus have called it. So essentially, to me, it showcases the negative fact that these other 3 slots are weaker than the safe slot, rather than the positive of having one safe slot, if you get what I mean. When in reality, these 3 slots are just fine, especially as Asus have actually used improved soldering techniques to make them stronger than with previous generations. But still, it causes you to have less confidence in them than you have with the safe slot, if you are sold by marketing for this slot. Realistically, for me anyway, I only really care about the strength of the first and the third slot, as that's where, if I'm using 2 GPUs, they go. So if the first and third slots have been reinforced, but the second and fourth hadn't, then it wouldn't have bothered me anywhere near as much, these 2 being comparatively weaker. And I should say that I do actually see some merit in having reinforced PCIe slots, as whilst I've never had a slot snap or break on me, I have noticed that after a few years of having a heavy card in your rig, the slots do tend to kind of have a little bit more flex to them than, what I'd like. Like, they've kind of weakened a little with age, and sometimes this can cause the tiniest amount more GPU sag than you'd have with a new motherboard. Although to most people this is just going to seem like a needless gimmick. But regardless, you can't deny that it stops the board from having a uniform look, even if it won't really matter once you install your GPU. Although, it is worth mentioning that MSI, for the same price point, have no problem reinforcing all of their slots. But I can't say how effective MSI's design is in comparison without doing some crazy experiment, like seeing how many bricks I can sit on a GPU before the slot breaks. Possible idea for a future video, maybe? No? Anyone? No? Okay. Never mind. So, just a few other things quick before I get this board in a rig. So, we've got 6 4-pin PWM fan headers. This one doubles as a water cooling pump header, giving you control over your pump, and this one doubles as a high amp fan header, providing you up to 3 amps of power for high speed, high current fans. Not sure why anyone would want a fan that powerful, given that it'd be really loud, but it's there if you want it. There's also headers here for a thermal sensor and for Asus's external fan hub, but these aren't included in the box. The power and reset buttons down here are a little disappointing visually. Like, personally, I use these buttons on boards all the time, so that kind of sucks. I mean, I agree with them not using the normal, like, bright red start button they use for ROG boards, as that would, like, break the colour theme they're trying to go for here, but, I mean, they could have used, like, the greyed out one that you get on the new Rampage board. I think this is actually the first ROG board I've ever had that hasn't had, like, a fancy start button. Even the lowest end Maximus Ranger boards have them. Also, there's no clear CMOS button, just a clear RTC jumper. So I think it's these kind of subtle things that really highlight the Strix X99's lower price point compared to the Rampage. There is still the MMK button though to help with memory compatibility, as well as the easy XMP switch to enable quick automatic memory overclocking. We've got two USB 3.0 internal headers for up to 4 ports on your case, and a Thunderbolt header if you want to install an optional Thunderbolt add-in card. We've got a single M.2 slot which can support form factors from 2242 to 2210, and that shares its bandwidth with this dedicated U.2 slot, which despite being found on some Z170 boards is new to the X99 platform, with you previously having to get an M.2 to U.2 adapter and choose one or the other. So this is really cool, and I think U.2 will be something we see a lot more of and will no doubt end up taking SATA Express's spot on boards, as I really don't kind of see people using SATA Express over U.2. That being said, we do still have one SATA Express port on this board, or up to 10 SATA free ports, depending on whether or not you actually use the SATA Express port for SATA Express. On the rear AA, there's a USB 3.1 Type A port and one reversible USB 3.1 Type C port. Personally, I'm not sure about Type C as a RAIO connector. I feel like it's much more suited at like the front of a case where you're frequently plugging cables in and out than at the back. Whereas with Type A, you know, it makes much more sense for the kind of your permanent USB devices. The Strix X99 game motherboard features their Wi-Fi Go module, which has wireless AC, which supports multi-user, multiple input, multiple output, or MUMUMO, and Bluetooth 4.1. There's a single Intel gigabit LAN port. I would have preferred 2 ports, but you know, at this price point, I didn't expect it. And then we've just got the Supreme FX audio section across here, which if you're looking to upgrade to this board from, you know, like a significantly older motherboard, then the audio here is going to be a big improvement compared to the onboard sound that you're used to. But compared to, you know, last year's stuff, there's no notable changes here. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to cover for now. I'm just going to get this board in a really quick so I can talk to you about the lighting and RGB aspects. So this is the Aura lighting software which you can use to control the motherboard's lighting. Although you can also use it to control additional lighting, such as that of compatible LED strips or Asus Aura compatible cases, by plugging them into the RGB header on the bottom of the board. Something to note though is that the X99 Strix only has one RGB header whenever ROG boards come with 2. There are some things that I think this software does really well, but there are also a whole lot of other things that it really doesn't do very well. So firstly, we have these 2 options up here, group and mainboard. I initially assumed that if you applied a setting within the mainboard tab, then it would be applied to all the LED sections on the motherboard, and that it was from within the group tab that you were able to assign different kind of colours or effects to the different LED, like, you know, sections or groups. However, it turned out the group tab is for choosing what the lighting does when the PC's on, and the mainboard tab is for choosing how the lighting is when the PC's on standby. I suppose you do kind of get these little headers here as indicators, but it's not very clear. There are 10 different lighting effect options that you can choose between. Obviously, CPU temperature and music aren't applicable when your PC's off. Static is the setting that I can see most people sticking to. It's a really great way to be able to simply set the accenting colour of the board. It's the ability to do this that makes me really love RGB products. Like, I see so many complaints from people saying that hardware and peripherals are becoming like Christmas trees thanks to the addition of RGB, when really I think the only reason that manufacturers kind of show products doing like those rainbow effects and stuff is to advertise the various different colours you could choose for it to be. And then that way what they can do is simply sell an RGB model of a product in which you can choose your preferred colour, rather than needing like a different SKU for every colour lighting option. And then this gives them a viable way to sell, for example, a like white or pink ROG Strix board. I think for this reason RGB is the way forward, and I think this board does a great job at that. You can choose for all of the lighting to be one colour, including, as you can see here, the addition of extra lighting. I currently don't have any additional lighting plugged in, as I wanted to show you the board on its own first, but I will plug in an LED strip a little later so you can see how it works with the settings. You can also choose to have each of these sections be a different colour. I do wish these coloured dots were a bit more of an accurate representation though. Even though it shows direction and speed down here, you're unable to change them for most of the settings. I wish rather than just greying them out, they'd actually hidden them, as it's not just that you're unable to change them, but it's also that they're actually irrelevant to what's happening with the effects. Like with glowing yo-yo, downstream is marked when the lighting actually travels upstream. Also, I find it very annoying that the UI is inconsistent, in that where you have no control over the colour settings, like here, the writing is greyed out, whereas the writing stays white where you don't have control over these settings. So if you hadn't seen that the dots go red when you can change them, you'd think that it was changeable and therefore like maybe not responding or something. Not being able to change the colour that some of the settings play in, I do think is a big issue. Whilst you're able to change the colours in static and breathing styles just fine, and whilst you expect for effects like colour cycle, rainbow and rainbow comet to have the LED colour options locked down, with an option like music for example, I do think that you'd want to be able to control what colour the lighting was beating to, rather than it cycling through the colours. Even in the CPU temperature option, the colours are locked down to change from green through like yellow and orange to red, and I would have liked the ability to be able to customise this, maybe have it be like blue for cool and then go through purple to like pink or red, or really I suppose you could choose for it to be any kind of three colours you wanted as long as you remembered which you'd chosen for cool and what you'd set for hot. Although I imagine the reason why it's locked to these colours, where it's like green for cool rather than blue, is so that it spends the majority of time on orange rather than purple, and obviously orange matches like the stock colour of the board. Another thing that I would like to have been able to do in CPU temperature is the option to choose at what temperature the colour starts changing, as you'll have very different colour expectations depending on whether you're using, say, an Intel stock cooler versus custom water cooling. But despite these two complaints, I do really like the basic concept behind this lighting option, as it is really nice just to be able to like glance at the system and have a rough idea of what's going on temperature wise. With the other lighting options, I do quite like the breathing option, although I do wish that you could slow it down a bit. Also, I would have preferred it if it didn't like completely fade to black between breaths. I think that strobing is completely wrong. It should be going flash, 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 not what it's doing here. Plus, no colour customization control. You then have colour cycle, which cycles through the colours as you'd expect. There's no speed or directional controls here, although I don't really think you'd expect for this effect to be able to travel. I do wish you could have slowed this down just a tad though, because I think it looked really nice, like really slowly going through the colours, like one of those like mood light things. With the rainbow option, it cycles through the colours in the same manner that colour cycle does, but then when it gets to red, it turns back on itself, going back through purple, blue, green, yellow and orange until it gets to red again, and then it like flips back on itself again. I would have liked this effect to travel either up or down the board rather than staying stationary, as I feel like this, it kind of stops it from being classified as rainbow for me. This option does have speed control though, unlike colour cycle, although I think that even on the slower speed, it's still a little faster than I would have liked it. I do wonder if it's still a little fast because Asus's RGB implementation may have limited colours. I don't know for sure, but there's no mention of it having 16.8 million colours or anything like that, and obviously the problem moving through the colour spectrum slowly is that when you don't really have enough colours, it can end in things looking very jumpy rather than smooth. This is all, pure speculation of course, so Rainbow Comet and Flash and Dash are two options that I think play the same effects. I mean, they look the same to me, but with slightly different, like a slight difference in the colours. With these you have both speed and direction controls, although again, I would have liked these effects to be much lower. And then finally we have Glowing Yo-Yo. It's just kind of like the breathing effect, but with some travel, although no colour control here. It cycles through the colours, but very, very slowly, so staying on each of the colours for about 15 to 20 seconds. Like, this is the speed that I probably have liked the colour cycle to go through the colours out. Maybe that's a little too slow. But I would have loved if this effect had like a downstream option so that it played like a raindrop effect. I have now plugged an RGB LED strip into the RGB header, and it works really nicely with both static and breathing options, where you're able to change the LED colour independently to those of the board, giving you a really like convenient and tidy way to add complementary case lighting to the build. So A+ there. However, in the lighting settings where the colour gets locked down, you lose control of the colour of this too, meaning that you couldn't, for example, have the case lighting be like a really nice, say like a subtle like blue, and then the board be like rainbowing. Like, you can't do that. The LED strip has to get involved, which is something that I really hate, because for me personally, I see the addition of case lighting within a build as something that should be used to like complement and highlight the hardware and like any lighting they might have, not to just like drown it all in a block of colour. And for this reason, I can't recommend using the onboard RGB header if you are looking to do anything other than use the static or breathing effects. You would be much better off just using an LED strip separately, which I think is something that the Aura software should definitely get marked down for. I should probably also note that the LED strip's involvement in the other settings really does not show off their effects in a very flattering way. Like, the effects are made to just look so much more like jerky and juddery than they otherwise would, causing some of the options like flash and dash to give you like a guaranteed headache. So overall, sadly, I do think the Aura software could use some work. Also, I'm sure you've noticed that the second PCIe clip hasn't been lighting up. It's not a TED LED or anything. This was a design choice, which Asus reassured me I wouldn't notice once the board was in a build. I noticed, and it annoys me every time I look at the system.
So that was just my look around the board. I'd love to have been able to test it against other X99 boards, allowing me to turn this video into a review, but unfortunately I don't have any other X99 board to compare the results against, and without any other results to put the Strixes into perspective, I'm afraid they won't really mean much for you. Despite this not being a review, I thought I could still talk about my kind of overall thoughts on it though. In terms of appearance, I do really like how it looks, and I do still like the look of the combination of like the customizable physical accenting colours with the RGB lighting. Even though since I first started making this video we have kind of moved away from that, and we're now seeing a lot of boards that are kind of mostly black with that only accenting colour kind of, you know, coming from the lighting. But even with that being the case, I think that with us continuing like along this trend, I do think I will actually start to miss boards that come with like a strong accenting colour on the board. Also, in terms of the appearance, I'm not entirely sure on Asus's design decisions that do kind of make the board not have a uniform look. But yeah, so I've been using this board for quite a few months now, and I've had, you know, no problems with it. It's been completely stable, which is great. And if someone, you know, was asking for a decent X99 motherboard, I'd have no problem recommending this to them, which is also great. So yeah, that was just my look at the Asus Republic of Gamers Strix X99 game motherboard. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. I'd love to know in the comments below what you think of the kind of physical accenting colours that you can customise. If you want to see more of my videos and you aren't already, please don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching.